Hi everybody, welcome. It's Thursday night. It's time to sew. I hope everybody's doing well. I know I'm doing great. I'm having fun sewing away. Today we're going to go into doing the stitching, because what's great about applique, and I'm not talking about machine applique. I am talking about doing it by hand, which is my favorite way of doing it. And the reason is because the pieces literally just float on top of the background fabric, and you're like, how are they stuck there? And yet it's got more dimension than it does whenever you're doing fusibles. Also, it's portable. I like to do the pre-turn because all of my pieces are ready. I spend like a day preparing all of my pieces. Then I can apply them at will to the background fabric and sew my little heart out. Today we're going to talk about the stitches. And the stitches are the same. The principles of the stitching is the same, whether you are talking about needle turn, the traditional way, the pre-turned hand applique, or even machine applique. The principles of the stitching are always the same. You need needles. I like the smallest needles you can get your paws on. And these are Bowen size 12 applique needles. They're very, very, very tiny. Hard to thread. You need one of these to thread them. Another good one is John James 12 applique. She also sells one for applique, and it's her smalls. Of course, you're paying postage from Australia. Sometimes you can find a dealer around you or in the States that'll mail them to you. You may or may not want a thimble. I like this kind, which is the leather. In fact, it's too long. I have little fingers, so I cut it so that it would not be stuck into the middle of the joint. And I use it on this side, not the coin side. The coin side, the needles get caught in it, so end of the needle. I don't like that. Actually, what I prefer to use are these things called thimblets. They're little plastic discs, and they're oval shaped. It's too big, so what I do is I cut them into thirds and round the corners, and then I use it. And you can use it a couple times, and then the adhesive wears off. So, you know, these last a long, long time, so I use these mostly. Now, I have no grip strength because I've got arthritis in my hands, so another very important thing to have is some balloons. Little pieces of balloons, and a lot of times I'll stick it on my thumb because I can't grip anything. I stick it on the thumb, and now that's going to grip the needle, and you can pull it through really easy. So I like this. So those are the things you sort of need to have. You also need to have a pair of scissors, and I have two pairs that are very sharp, that will cut right to the tip. You want very good scissors. These are made by Bowen. These are my airline scissors. If you're going to do the pre-turned, this is important. I just went and bought another 12-pack of glue, reading glasses, and of course your thread. You want your thread to be as thin as possible. I like to use the YLI silk, which is 100 silk. You could also use bottom line thread by Superior Threads, which is ultra thin. And you could also use Just in Black and White Finishing Touch, which we get with our Baby Lock and Brother machines. You can use that, but it only comes in black and white. From Superior Threads, you can buy, now these are all silks, but you can buy the Superior Thread sells a bobbin kit with the 60 or 70 weight bobbin thread, which is the same bottom line, and therefore they come in different colors because I have lots of colors. Now I have silks on them, but you can also get them with the polyester. They both work just as well. You want the thinner the thread and the thinnest needle you can possibly get away with. A lot of people like to use straw needles, which are longer. They're a little easier to handle. However, they bend and break very easily, and I can't keep a straw needle for more than like 10 minutes. So yeah, forget the straw needles for me. I'm just too heavy-handed with my needles. The stitching, you want it to be as invisible as possible, so we're going to be using a blind stitch of some sort, but it's a hand blind stitch. Start with a straight stitch. Everybody's got their favorite markers. This one happens to be my favorite, which is the friction pen, because if you don't like it, you just hit it with an iron and it's basically gone. So, and usually with Needleturn, you can mark your background, or you can do something like this where you have a piece that you put it on top so that when you go to put baste your next piece on, then you know where to put it. I always recommend that you quarter it so that you always return to I think we talked a little bit about marking your background. Okay. There's all different kinds of ways to mark your background. Some people use whatever you use to mark your background or your pieces. You want to have the thinnest line available. Different ones make different thicknesses. This is actually my favorite because it gives you a nice, let's see, you can see it, a nice thin line. This one is my neck for chalk markers. This is made by Soline, and I like this. It's chalk, it's traditional chalk, and it washes out. You can use pencil. You want your background fabric to be a looser weave, and you want your applique fabric to be as dense as you can get it, which is why I like to use batiks. Batiks are very dense fabric. The reason is, if you have a teeny little hem, and you're using that, say sometimes you're rolling that thing literally less than like a 1/10 of an inch. You've only got about 3 or 4 threads running this way, and they're easy to pull out. See, it frays easily, okay? Where a batik, that same dense will probably be 6 or 7 rows because the fibers are thinner and it's not as easy to fray, which is why I like to use batik fabrics. The denser the weave, the better. I'm going to draw a leaf shape, okay? Not perfect, but you get the idea. It's a leaf, okay? You're going to cut it out, and this will be the surface of your fabric, the right side. You're going to cut it usually about 1/4 of an inch around. I usually go less. I will do a scant 1/4 of an inch. The smaller the piece, the smaller your seam allowance. Okay. And so you would want to baste this onto your background fabric. You can baste it in several ways. You can pin it on, which I don't like pinning it on because I stick myself, and you don't want to pin it this way. Okay, you guarantee you're going to stick yourself. You want to pin from underneath with the smallest pin you can get a hold of. For hand needle turn, you don't want to glue it. I like to baste it with regular thread. You want to baste inside, and I just put a spit knot because I'm going to take it out. And I want to just, let me take this pin out. Yeah. I'm just going to baste it around with big stitches, nothing fancy. Okay, just to hold it in place. Because I'm going to work inside, and you don't want to be pulling the basting out if you don't have to. And like I said, I usually don't even knot it. I just cut it, and it's basted in place. I'm going to use black thread. Okay. Problem with this really thin thread is that it falls off the needle really easily. So to keep this needle from falling off, especially when the thread gets to be short, you're going to take the thread and you're going to bend it, take the end, not the part with the knot, but the part that's closest to the needle, and you bend it once, even twice. So it makes like an S in your hand. Loosely hold it in your hand and put the needle, pierce the thread, because I can't see that. It pierced in like an S shape. You need to get it at least twice. 3 is best, okay? And you pierce the edge of the thread, and then I'm going to pull the needle down, and see, it goes really flat, and that needle won't come off. See, it's stuck at the end. It will not come off. You won't lose your needles inside your couch. And now here we go with the stitches. You want your stitches, it's a blind stitch. So I start by putting my thread, now right here, if you can see. Here's my line. I'm going to bring that thread up with the knot, and I'm just using a little quilter's knot, just inside the printed line. Okay, so I come up. Now how you're going to hold your fabric is that you're going to pinch it like this in your other hand, whether you're right or left-handed, you just invert it. Okay, then you're going, traditional needle turn says you take the tip of your needle and you want to bend it so, and you only worry about maybe 1/4 of an inch at a time, and you take your needle and you sweep it under till you can't, till barely see the line. Okay, now I want the thread, this is coming out, going into the background fabric, straight even with the stitch you just came out of. You're going to put your needle down and roll it up at a 45-degree angle. So I go down straight, and then I take a 45-degree angle, and I'm still pinching, don't let this go. And you're going to want to take your next stitch so that it literally is inside. Just, you're only grabbing 1 or 2 threads, and you're going to do that. And I keep stitching until and then again go straight that way and straight up. Go straight out. You see, I missed. Now I'll show you, because I did miss one. Okay. See right here, I didn't go straight down, and you can see that thread. Okay, and you just keep going. If you have a straightaway, or relatively straight, you can take your fingers and pinch on the line, and that gets you pre-folded. If it doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, let me do a few stitches here. Okay, after you do about 3 or 4 stitches, you're going to come to the end, sort of hold about a 1/2 inch away, and tug. That is going to roll those stitches underneath, and right now the only one you can see is the one that I didn't go straight. I went at an angle. Okay, if it doesn't want to turn, say you're getting to a really tiny seam and it doesn't want to turn, grab a big flower head pin, one that you can keep track of. Elmer's glue, and this is going to be your sacrificial needle. You're not going to be able to use this for much of anything. And you take your Elmer's school glue, run your needle in it, make it slightly damp. You don't want a glob of glue, you just want a little bit. Then you're going to take this and sweep, and then you squeeze and pull the needle out, and it slightly bastes. See, now I can let it go. See, now it is basted, that tiny edge. It's not enough to cause you problems needling through it, but, and after a while, usually I can tell. I'll go straight, and I just simply, as soon as it's almost like hand quilting. As soon as you feel the needle go through one side, you tilt it 45 degrees and scoop underneath of the next seam. How far apart do these stitches have to be? Depends on how your seam allowance is. They have to be at least as close together as your seam allowance is. Like, say if you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, your stitches have to be at least a 1/4 inch apart. If you have it more than that, then it can come out with a wash, or from handling, those seam allowances will work their way out. Okay. And I'm coming right up to the point. Okay, now this we're going to talk about points now. How to turn a point. Okay, so see I've given that tag. Okay, so now I'm going to come straight on. I'm going to take 2 stitches into the point. 2 of them because you want to reinforce it. 1, 2. And this you want to use the same color thread. Okay, I put double stitches right here. Okay, I'm going to fold this back right on the line where I want to go. And see that little triangle that's made? I'm going to cut from one end of that triangle to the other. Okay? Then I'll turn my work. Where'd the needle go? See, I could have lost that needle into the couch if it hadn't been attached. Here it is. Okay, ideally, and usually this is where, you know how on the other one I said take a screwdriver and pre-crease it? Well, pre-crease that before you start to go. Give it a good crease with your fingers. Okay? You are going to take the needle into the point and you're going to sweep it under straight towards you. In other words, you're sweeping it to the center of the point. Pull this out, so give that thread a tug. Then you're going to sweep this in underneath, and sometimes that's hard. Okay, when it's hard, that usually means your seam allowance is just a little bit too big. So I'm going to cut that seam allowance down. It's too big. Doesn't want to fit in there. If it doesn't want to go smoothly, glue. Okay, run your pin through, hold your hand, and sweep it under. See, now you know why the pre-turning them is a whole lot easier. And then take it and squash it in there. Okay. Yep. And that little bit of glue makes it stay still. And here I didn't draw that line good. Okay. Sometimes you might have a little thread sticking out, so just shove it back in. Okay. Pull your, cannot grab this. Here we go. Pull that harder and now start to stitch. Get that good inside. And I don't have it under, I don't have it all under there. The sharper the point, the harder this is. So if you start with a 90-degree or less than a 45-degree angle, then it's a whole lot easier. Okay, and then the same thing, you just start stitching. Come down. And that's why I like using that friction marker, because if you don't get it right exactly, you don't have to wash it, just hit it with, it's so close to the line, nobody's going to know if that line still is visible. Okay, one more. Okay, and there's your point. Okay, and watch, I'm going to hit it with an iron. Okay, this is my clover iron. Just hit it. You can't see it anymore. It's all good to go. I'm going to turn that thing off before I burn this house up. So, okay, now I want to show you a trick if we don't get the point nice. Okay. Okay, this point is kind of rounded. If I want it sharper than that, okay, here's my point. Okay, you can see that. And see, instead of coming to a sharp point, it gives you a rounded edge, and you want it pointy. Okay. For one thing, if this is too hard to handle, what you want to do is you would come in and put your stitches maybe about 1/4 of an inch apart. So here's my stitches. And you know it needs to be closer. You can always come back Usually I will come back another 1/4 of an inch and then go back again. And now, because the closer you are, because like your fabric here is maybe that far, your seam allowance is about that far, but the closer you get to this point, the smaller this is. And you may have that point put together by only 1 or 2 threads. And it's going to want to come rounded on you like it just did. So we're going to do something called, that this is Lucien calls it, she calls it the Chinese weaver is what she calls it. Okay. Okay, you're going to start, you would say have your stitches like this, okay? And you stitched it and it's still all rounded. You're going to bring your needle up here, okay? This is the background. Up here, go straight across this way. Come down, go right close to it again. Over here, and then finally over to the edge, and then you're going to pull. I'll show you how you do it. Okay, say I don't like this over here, so I'm going to pull. It's rounded and I want it sharper. Okay, I'm going to bring it to in about 1/4 of an inch away from the point, and I'm just going to knot it there so that it doesn't pull and distort the rest of the point. So just there. Okay, I'm going to come up about a little more than 1/8 of an inch away on the background fabric. Come up. Okay. Sorry. Then you want to go straight across. Okay, just through the applique piece, like that. You're going to come down a little more, okay, and go straight across the other way. Then come over to the end. Tug. Look at how sharp that point has become, and then go down into the background fabric. Okay? See, pulling it, and then you would knot it so that you give it a nice little tug, and look at how sharp that edge is. Okay? You can also do this with the Chinese weaver on your pre-turned pieces. If you find that you didn't get them nice and sharp when you pre-turned them, don't worry about it. Just stitch them, and then when you're all done, the only thing you have to do different with the pre-turned piece is that's kind of hard and stiff because it's got a lot of glue in it. So wait till you're all done, rinse it out, let it soak a little bit, let that glue soak away, and now your fabric is nice and thin, and then you can come in and manipulate your fabrics to do a Chinese weaver and get that super sharp point. And yes, I'm using black thread on light blue. I would never do that. I would use the same color thread. You would never see it. And when I take my time, I literally am only pulling one single little stitch. Okay, now, to do those tiny little bars like she did, okay, to do stems, I like to start with a 1/4 of an inch pre-turned bias strip, and I use my Clover bias maker to do it. So let me just clip a little bit of it, okay? And I'm going to sew this rather quickly. I usually would have like a line where I want these to go, okay? And usually I put however thick I want it. If, say I want to have 1/8 of an inch thick, okay? I want one that thick. Well, this is thicker than that, okay? So I find one edge, and I'm going to sew it right there. And I'm not going to pay attention to these knots, so let me get this sewn as fast as I can. This is where you want to have good scissors. And I'm just going to end it here. Okay. How am I going to get that all into there? It's like, that looks impossible. No, it isn't. Okay, you're going to roll this back. Spread it out. This is now already sewn, so you literally can clip it right next to the stitching. Just don't cut your stitching out. And you literally have a teeny tiny line. Okay? Now, I want this to be about 1/8 of an inch thick, so I'm going to trim this down. It's too wide. So I'm literally going to trim it just a little bit wider than the finished bar is going to be. Okay? And this is where I use my trusty pen. This is awfully tiny. Okay, so I'm going to take my and just push it in, get it really close, and using the glue makes it stay, at least for a little while. Okay, and where's my needle? Here it is. Okay, just going to come across and just start stitching it in. I would go across like you're supposed to, but I'm not going to right now. Okay, and then here's what I'm doing. Okay. I'm only worrying about 1/4 of an inch at a time. Don't worry about what's happening any further than your thumbnail. Okay, and then see, I can just sweep this underneath, and if it doesn't want to go, you get the glue, and it doesn't want to go because I'm holding it funny. Now, even when I pre-turn, I don't ever pre-turn my stems because this is easier. Look how thin this is. Okay? And see, it's staying. I don't have to hold it. That glue gives you not enough to have a hard time to needle through, but it's just a tiny bit enough to make it stay still and that you're not fighting the thread. And this is not proper batik. I am turning something very tiny, and it's a standard, I think maybe 80 stitches, 80 threads to the inch quilting cotton. This isn't even batik, which batik is usually about 180 to 200 threads per inch. Okay, and again using black thread, look at the tiny. See, when I give it a tug, all those threads disappear. And look at that. That is very, very tiny. I could get even smaller if I wanted to, and I would take more time, but I'm not going to. Okay? Alrighty. Let's do an inside point, which is the opposite of that kind of point. Okay, I'm going to... it looks like the same point, huh? It's not. So here's my piece. And I'm going to cheat. I'm going to just glue baste the two edges down so I don't have to baste it in. But I want to how I want to cut this is, before I baste it in place, is that I'm going to go about 1/8 of an inch away, or a generous 1/8 here, and I'm going to cut all the way to the point, but not through the point, and not a couple threads away from the point. Oops, didn't cut that. Missed by a thread. Okay, and now I'm going to set it in place. Okay, just to baste it in place. Embroidery bobbin thread, that's what I'm using. Works great. And it is a lot cheaper than the silk. But when I started appliquing, there was no bottom line thread. You had silk and you had regular thread. Okay, so again, I have a straightaway, so I'm going to fold it just to make it easier. I'm just going to mostly baste this in really loose till I get to the middle. Okay. Oops, what was that? Now when you've got a sweep in, you want to sweep in, but see how it's not wanting to go? Yeah, you know, this is what glue's for. It's to show thread who's boss. Show this fabric who's boss. Well, I'm boss. So you're going to go as I want. So again, I've got a little tiny bit of glue on, and it's not a lot. It's just, I pass the needle through it, and I sweep in one time. I'm not going really close yet. I'm just, because I wanted to sweep in again. So I'm going to go closer. And again, I'm just cheating here. I'm not paying attention. Okay, as you get closer, your stitches have to get closer together because you're dealing with less and less thread. Okay, as I get to the inside, I'm going to sweep past the point and pinch. Okay, here's the end of the point. I have a fold clear to there. And then I'm going to stitch. I'm doing big stitches, okay? There's also a remedy for that too. But as I get closer to the point, the stitches get closer and closer and closer. Okay, until you get to the end, and then the very point of it, you're going to go a little past. Okay, go directly underneath of it and come out the same hole. You're not catching background fabric. And you pull it. Okay, now, as I pull it, it's going to disappear my threads. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to, if I have, it's a long one, so I'm going to pre-crease it. Okay, and sweep one time and sweep way hard. Pull hard. And if it you have little hairs that stick out, glue. Okay? This is going to make it stay. Now, I've got to really, now is this point going to hold if I don't put enough stitching in here? No, I wash it. Those threads are going to come right out. So then I'll go up. Remember, the stitches have to be smaller, closer together than the width of the seam allowance. So if you have a 1/16 of an inch here, or 2 threads, guess what? Your stitches have to be 2 threads apart. Okay? Now that was pretty good. Okay? That did pretty good. You can see it. That's a pretty sharp point. Of course, I've been doing this a long time. Now, if you didn't get it close enough, there's nothing saying you can't go back and fill in the stitches. There's nothing saying you can't go back and put stitches all the way in. Okay? Now, if you have it still rounded, you want to do something called the Aussie twist. Sounds weird, okay? But the Aussie twist is really cool. Let's see if I can find it. And this is also Lucien's. She coined it. So the Chinese weaver is on an outside point. The Aussie twist is on the inside. You're going to start in the background fabric. Okay? All right, wait a minute, I take that back. You are going to start on the inside, okay? So you're grabbing the edge of the thread of the piece. You're going to go straight down into the background fabric, and I'll draw this out for you. Okay? You're going to come up on the other side through the fabric, or through the applique piece. We're talking about 1/8 of an inch away, okay? And then you're going to go down right beside it into the fabric. You are going to come out and this is granted, I'm long, further away than 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to come inside here, which is the point. I'm going to, again, pull right into the background fabric. And then I'm going to pull it. That's why you want a good strong thread, because now that was a good point and it's even better now. Look how tight that is. Okay, so let me draw this out on paper for you. Here's my, okay, here's my point, and it's rounded. Okay, so I'm going to start with this is 1/8 of an inch away. This is about 1/8 inch between here and here. Okay, so my thread comes up here. Okay, it's going to go down. Let me change colors. Anytime I go down, I'm going to do it in red. I got to go down right beside it and slightly underneath of it. Okay, I'm going to come up on the other side exactly opposite, and I'm going to go down on the background fabric right beside it. I'm going to come up. If this is rounded, I'm going to come to here, and then I'm going to shove and put another piece in the background fabric underneath, then pull it, because then what it does is it's like a corset. It's going to cinch it up. So let me do it again. Here's my V, 1/8 inch. Okay, I'm going to, this is coming up. Okay, up is blue, down is red. That's background. This is the piece. Okay, come up into the right exactly opposite, 1/8 of an inch, away from the tip. Go down straight. Okay, and we're just going to say, let me see. Good thing about erasable pens. See, this is rounded and I want it sharp. Okay, I'm going to come beyond the round at the point. I'm going to angle that needle in on the background fabric so that it's virtually underneath, going down into the background fabric, and pull tight. That's going to cinch that in and make this really tight and really tiny. That's actually how I did all these little teeny points. There's a million of them. Okay, is it perfect? No. This has been washed and I have to go back into it, and anywhere that I see something that needs to be fixed, the glue is now all washed out of it, and therefore I can go in and do some, this would be the Chinese weaver, and I would do some, see, like that's kind of rounded, I'm going to do an Aussie twist and pull that in. So this one isn't done. Probably be 100 years old before it is. Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about curves, inside and outside curves. Okay, so say you have a curve. Okay, and here's my seam allowance. You're just going to work tiny little bits at a time. So you're going to just simply curve it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and only work that tiny little bit at a time. Don't worry about what's going on over here. Only worry about this line. If you end up getting little jagged peaks, you can come back over here and smooth, because usually when you've got a jagged peak, you have this. This is going to be, when you're going around a circle and you end up with jagged peaks. That's because this is usually where your stitches are. Okay, you're going to need to come in and pull those in and do stitches here to soften that up. Okay, on an outside curve, this is your seam allowance here, you're going to want to do cuts. Depending on how deep your curve is, how many cuts you want to do. And you want that cut to come right up to the line. Not through the line and not in front of the line. And then you just simply treat this as a straight and just keep going round and round and round. Curves are easy to do. Okay. Let's see. circles. I love to do circles. If you are doing circles that are 1/4 of an inch or bigger, I like to do them with these things, which is Karen K. Buckley's got these perfect circles, and here's the tiniest one right here, which is about anything bigger than, I mean, anything 1/2 an inch. You can use these plastic templates, and what you do is you treat it just like a yo-yo, that you cut your circle bigger than that, and you do a running stitch around it. Then you pull it around here, press it with some spray starch, and now you got a perfect little circle. Take the plastic template out, and you're good to go. But you need them smaller than this. And here's a finished one, okay? See, here's a finished one. And you can see there's the back of it. And then turn it over. And now if you end up with little points here and there like I do, I'm just going to handle that with the stitching. So as I stitch it, if I see a little point, I'm going to push in. Let me see if you can see this. See, I always see a point there. What I would do is take my needle and push that point from under inside and soften that point, and then stitch it at that spot, and that'll smooth it all up, so it makes it really nice. Itty bitty circles, and I do mean itty bitty circles, okay? Can you do them? Yeah. It was so funny. I came back from taking Lucien's class. I took it when I went to Houston to the International Quilt Festival. It was 2 years in a row I took like a 3-day, the one was a 2-day thing where we did nothing but this stuff, you know, applique. And then the next year I took hand quilting with her, which wasn't quite as successful for me. Okay, I'm not as good. Okay, say I want to do a little teeny circle. Oh, that's too small. Okay, no it isn't. It's not too small. Okay, I'm going to trim it about 1/8 of an inch around, and that is a tiny little circle. You think I can do this? Let's see if I can. I'm going to leave my knot on the back. Most of the time I'm going to run my knot inside the applique piece, but I'm going to be doing a lot of trimming here, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start underneath. So I start by folding over my fabric. Okay, I'm going to come from underneath and catch. Come on. There we go. Take a little knot stitch and start turning it. And I'm going to stuff. I'm not going to be too picky about what I stuff at this point and how big my stitches are. I'm going to make them as big as I need to. Definitely not as small as they should be, but it's all I can handle right now. Okay? And I keep stuffing it till I can't stuff anymore. So I'm going around in a circle trying to stuff this. Oh, I was telling you, I learned this, and I think you all know I have my friend Shoko Ferguson, who is like the most amazing hand quilter and appliquer on God's green earth. And I thought, I know something she doesn't know how to do. And I was so excited I came back to show it to her how to do this circle, and she goes, yeah, I know. I went, damn. I got to get up early, real early, and I'll never, ever be able to applique as well as she does. Okay. I can't get any more, well, let me see if I can shove any more in there. It doesn't have to be, no, I can't. I can't shove any more in there. Okay, so I'm going to loosen this up. And the reason I can't shove any more in there is because it's full. I can't put any more in here. Okay, so now I'm going to hold these threads tight, and I'm going to cut out this thread, this fabric, so there's like nothing in there, just holding on by the stitches, and that's it. Okay, come back out. Now we stuff some more. I'm going to stuff as much in there as I can. Oh my goodness, this one's even smaller than the one I did a long time ago. This is beginner's luck. So I haven't done this in, God, 10 years. Okay. All right, I'm really going to have to start shoving it in there. If it doesn't want to go, get the sturdier pin. You can go and trim if you need to. And I'm just cramming it in there. Okay. And stitch. And you know what? I'm not worried if these stitches are close enough because I'm going to handle it with, okay, it's not round, right? Okay, we're going to fix that. Guess how? Chinese weaver. Okay, so I'm going to come down, come up, and see that wasn't enough here, so I'm going to stuff that in there some more. Run it through this way. And now I'm going to run those needles crosswise like that until it's round and is the shape I want it. Okay, and this needs to come a little more. And I'll work my way around. Pulling tighter, and if it's oval, then I'm going to pull tighter in one direction than the other. And see, that is not, get that needle here. The pin that's, the reason I'm using the pin is because the pin is sturdier, so I can push harder in there. That, I just pulled it out. Okay. Go across this way. And through here. And I think this is, I mean, I could fool around with it some more. But, look at that itty bitty bitty circle. Okay, you can get little tiny, and once you pull it to the back, and if you have the same color, not a problem. Look at that. Awesome. That is amazing. To me, that's amazing. And it's three-dimensional, which is, you want applique to be three-dimensional. Of course, once you press it, it's good. If you have any little stray hairs still sticking out, cut them off. No one's going to see it. Get a really sharp scissor. And those are hanging out from underneath. So I'm just going to cut them off. They're not in this, they're not affecting, look at that. Tiny. Awesome. Okay. I'm amazed every time that this can be done. I mean, this thing is, okay, it is 1/8 of an inch. That is 1/8 of an inch circle. Okay. Now, when it comes to your stitching the pre-turn, okay, so what you do is you put on your first pieces, and like I just glued it down. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to treat these as if they were doing needle turn. Is only, I don't need to do those needle sweeps at all. So what I do is, again, here's my piece. Looks like that. Okay. It's already turned. Here we go. See, it's already turned. So my stitches are literally, I'm going to stitch, and I had pretty decent size stitching. I mean, they weren't, I think I have a scant 1/4 of an inch, but I'm going to stitch here, 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 and then as I come in close, I'm going to do a stitch here. I'm going to do a stitch here. I'm going to do a stitch here, another stitch here, and pull that in tight, and then put another. In other words, if my point is like this, I want to stitch here. I want to stitch here and a stitch here. and maybe even closer, okay? And then for contrast, the rest are about that far apart, okay? Same thing with the inside point, which I don't, this piece is an inside point, okay? Again, there's that. So again, I'm going to stitch, 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 as if I was doing it with needle turn, a stitch here, a double stitch here that I'm pulling this, that I'll be taking red thread and shoving that so that it's even tighter, and then all the way out. These stitches are relatively close together because there's almost no thread back there. There's no fabric here. So those stitches have to be at least as small as that. So right over here where it's teeny tiny, I'm going to have a stitch here, and a stitch here. That's less than 3 stitches and less than 1/8 of an inch. When I go here, I'm going to have a stitch here, a double stitch here, go here close, and then come down and around. And then, like I said, you want your stitches, like this is a scant, but I would still put my stitches at about 1/8 of an inch. I do tiny stitching, I always have. To me, I don't have to look, because as I'm rocking that needle, so it's straight down this way, and I'm going to rock it up underneath. So I rock it, turn it 45 degrees, and come straight up, and usually it's just as far as the needle can go. It literally is, here I'll show you with no fabric here. Here, and I rock it up. Not with glue on the end of it, I'm not. Fine when it doesn't have any glue. Okay, so take my needle, go down, rock it 45 degrees, and literally that stitch is you're just going to immediately pull it back up and then come down straight, 45 degrees up. Straight, 45 degrees, and then pull up. So that way you can actually, once you get used to it, get a rhythm going, you're stitching pretty fast. So I think if I get this stitched tonight, and then what makes this easier is that I can do all of this stitching. Now, where another piece goes on top, like right here, there'll be another one on the top. I'm just going to come stitch to here, double stitch here, and just do a running stitch, just to hold it down so it doesn't wiggle around. Now when I'm done, if you're doing traditional needle turn, you're going to trim away the back of the stitching. And I don't have one already done. Oh wait, there we go. Okay, now here's the back. If the background fabric is 1/4 of an inch, it is 2 seam allowances apart, you don't need to trim it. Like over here I wouldn't need to, but over here where it's far apart, I'm going to take my scissor at the end and pull this background fabric out. And why you want to do that is because once you have it quilted, it can pucker. So if you take the background fabric out, it's not going to twist and pucker. Unless you're going, and then also you're going to want to quilt inside your most people don't quilt inside their appliques. I do. If it's 1 inch of space unquilted inside of an applique, I'm going to quilt it. And when I'm dealing with the turned applique stuff, I don't pull the background fabric out. And the reason is because now once this is washed, this inner stuff fluffs out and it becomes almost like a trapunto. It gives it some loft. And therefore, I've never had any trouble with things looking puckered and twisted and whatnot. But I do quilt inside my applique all the time. If it's bigger than 1 inch, like when I go to quilt this, I'm probably going to come down one side and put some line, or come up through here and make lines so that it looks like, and then maybe put some vein lines in here so that it makes it look a little better. And usually on leaves, I will do a quilt line up the middle here so that it looks like a regular leaf. So if you missed last week, you can always go back to last week's and watch it. And if you have any questions, you can always send me an email at waltzquilt@yahoo.com. That's WALTZ QUILT@yahoo.com, and I'll be happy to answer it. So anyway, have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.